Hey, all right, week 3, our first batch of assignments are out of the way, so we're kind of hopefully in a rhythm at this point. If you still feel like you're not at ease with this class, if you're like having a hard time finding anything or getting in a rhythm, if you'll let me know if you're having trouble, I'll do whatever I can to help you. Just like notice if you're getting behind on assignments or things like that, it's not too late to fix that now. We're still very early in the semester. If you put it off and keep waiting, and at the end of the semester you're still not caught up, that's when you can kind of get in trouble. So seriously, reach out. You're not going to bother me at all. Anything I can do to help, give you tips or anything like that, I'd be glad to do that. Remember, in your syllabus too, there's a section that says like strategies for success. It's good to review that every once in a while just to make sure you're doing everything you can to put yourself in a position to do well in here. All right, so this week, first thing is the practice exam. If you didn't do that already, I mentioned that last week and it's been open for a week now. So all the practice exam, number one is to make sure we don't have any technical issues with Blackboard before we have our first test, which is coming up next week. Number two is you have to, whenever you do an exam in here, you have to record your desk or table surface. You have to do a 360 of your environment. You have to keep that webcam centered on you during the test, and you can't have any resources. So in a test, that's important. That's a 100-point test that you can lose points for if you don't do those things. So I wanted you to have a chance to practice, and then I can review it, and if I see any issues or if I see anything you need to change, I'll write you a message and give you some feedback before the real test. All right? So if you didn't do the practice exam, that's due this Wednesday, September 7th. Just make sure you do it before then. That'll give me time to review your videos at the end of the week and give you any feedback if you need to. All right. So our last lecture that's going to be on the first exam, we've already done the Intro to Animals and Sponges and Cnidarians. We're going to do flatworms, roundworms, rotifers, and annelids. So we're still looking at really simple animals. Most of these are worms, not all of them, but looking at a bunch of different types of worms. When we think worm, you might think of like something you use to go fishing, like earthworms is what we're typically familiar with. But there's a lot of different types of worms on Earth, so we're going to go through and look at all of those. You've got a review quiz, which is due Sunday the 11th, so just when you finish your lecture video, make sure you do that review quiz by the end of the week. And then our first lab assignment is due this week. So I know I might have bugged you, but I've been sending messages for people who haven't signed up for SI Cloud, or I'll probably send another one early this week about if you haven't done those prerequisite assignments. That's just because labs are like a quarter, they're like over 20% of our grade in here. So if you don't do those labs, you're not going to do well in this class. So I just want to make sure everyone knows what you got to do to get credit for the labs. So if you haven't already, number one, sign up for SI Cloud. That's our website that we use to do all the lab assignments in here. And you have to purchase the lab kit. I know for a fact if you haven't bought it yet, you've got a message from me and probably an email saying that you've got to buy your lab kit. You got to have that this week. So go ahead and get those set up. And then once you sign up for your account, there's a couple prerequisite assignments. It's just making sure you can use the website, make sure you know about lab safety, and then it's going to get you to go through your lab kit real quick and just make sure that you've got all the equipment that you need. All right. Once you have done that, your lab assignment is due this Sunday also. So it's on classification of species. This is because we're going to be talking about a bunch of different types of plants and animals and fungi in this class. In 103, we talked about taxonomy and classification and how we group organisms. So this is just going to kind of be a review of what that means, how you group different organisms based on their characteristics. All right. So we don't really cover that much in this class, so I'll try to be kind of lenient when I'm grading this one. But at the very end of this lab, it's going to get you to use something called a dichotomous key. This is something that you use if you find like a new organism. This is a guide that's going to help you identify it correctly. And then at the very end, it's going to get you to make one. So it's going to have a bunch of different pictures of different types of leaves from trees. And it's going to get you to make a dichotomous key. Now this is kind of tricky. It's not something we cover in lecture, but the instructions for this are really good. So I want you to make sure when you make your dichotomous key, the way to figure out if you've done it right or not is you should be able to read that key, and if you follow those instructions, you should be able to identify any of the leaves that are on there and figure out what tree they belong to. Okay? So the way it works, again, you'll read the instructions are really clear, but the way it works is you'll read like step 1, this leaf has smooth edges on the outside. And it'll tell you, if your leaf does have smooth edges, it'll tell you jump to step 2. It might say your leaf has jagged edges on the outside, and then that would say jump to step 3. So it's like, I don't know if anyone remembers the like make your own adventure books where you could read and you get to pick what the character does. It's almost kind of like that, but it's a guide that helps you identify leaves. So if you have trouble with it, let me know. But when you're done, before you submit it, pick one of the leaves and read along and see if that makes sense. You should be able to follow those instructions and identify any of the plants. Okay? You don't have to purchase anything for lab this week, but you do have to have access to your SI Cloud. So that means, number one, you have to buy the lab kit to unlock SI Cloud, to unlock that assignment, and you also have to do the prerequisites. So just make sure you do those before the first lab is due. All right, finally, last thing, our first exam is next week, so it's coming up pretty quick. It's just on the intro to animals, sponges and cnidarians, and then all of the material that we're covering this week: flatworms, roundworms, rotifers, and annelids. So basically all that means is start studying. If you haven't done that already, there's a study guide posted in the learning materials in the Unit 1 folder. Use that study guide. If there's anything you're struggling with, or if it doesn't make sense, let me know, send me a message, and I'll be glad to help you out with that too. But just get ready for the first test, and like I said, feel free to reach out if I can help.